She was invisible at work until her boss overheard. "I'm free tonight." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. She had learned how to walk quietly, not because anyone asked her to, but because being noticed had never changed anything anyway. Every evening, just after 6, when most of the office lights flickered off one by one, she stayed behind. The hum of the air conditioner grew louder. Keyboards went silent. The city outside the glass windows pulsed with headlights and distant sirens, while she remained at her desk, finishing work that no one would ever remember assigning to her. Her name rarely came up in meetings. When it did, it was usually followed by silence. She was the kind of employee people described with phrases like reliable, low maintenance, and easy to overlook. And she had made peace with that. That night felt no different at first. She gathered her bag, slipped her phone between her shoulder and ear, and spoke softly as she walked toward the elevator, unaware that anyone else was still on the floor. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice warm in a way it never was at work. "I am free tonight." She smiled, a real smile, the kind no one at the office ever saw. There was a pause on the line. Then she added, almost teasing, "Do not worry. I will not be late, my love." She laughed under her breath. Behind her, just a few feet away, someone stopped walking. He had been heading back to his office to grab a forgotten folder. One of those small, pointless errands that executives rarely remember, but always regret ignoring later. He did not mean to listen. He did not mean to hear anything at all. But her words landed anyway. "I am free tonight, my love." They echoed in his head in a way quarterly reports never did. He stood there, motionless, his hands still on his phone, staring at the polished floor as if it had suddenly shifted beneath him. For months, she had been nothing more than a background detail in his company, a presence he recognized without truly seeing, someone who completed tasks, followed instructions, and disappeared at the end of the day. And yet, for reasons he could not immediately explain, that single sentence tightened something in his chest. "My love." The word irritated him, then unsettled him. Then, unexpectedly, it burned. He told himself it was none of his business. Employees had lives, relationships, plans that did not include conference rooms or deadlines. So why did the idea of her walking out of the building to meet someone else make his jaw tighten? Why did he suddenly feel as though he had arrived too late to something important, something he had never known he was missing? She ended the call, slipped her phone into her bag, and pressed the elevator button, unaware of the man standing behind her, fighting the strange and unwelcome realization rising in his chest. For the first time since founding the company, he was not thinking about profit margins or market share. He was thinking about her, and he did not like what that meant. She did not know he had heard her. By the time the elevator doors closed behind her, her mind was already somewhere else. She was thinking about the subway ride home, about reheated leftovers, about how good it felt to finally take off her shoes at the end of a long day. Whatever warmth had colored her voice on that phone call faded the moment she stepped back into her quiet routine. The next morning, she arrived 10 minutes early, as she always did. Same desk, same chair with the loose wheel that squeaked if she leaned too far to the left. Same unreadable faces passing by without eye contact. She powered on her computer, opened her task list, and began working before the coffee in the break room had even finished brewing. If anyone noticed her, they did not show it. She moved through the office like background noise. Not invisible exactly, but unremarkable enough to be forgotten the moment someone looked away. She answered emails that no one wanted to deal with, fixed small errors that saved larger meetings later, stayed late when asked, and sometimes when she was not. And she never complained. Not because she was afraid, but because she had learned something early in her career. Complaints did not change systems. Consistency did. She needed the job. That part was simple. Her rent had gone up again last winter. Her mother's medical bills arrived like clockwork, thick envelopes stamped urgent in red. There was no safety net, no backup plan waiting in the background. This paycheck was stability, even if it came without recognition. So she worked, quietly, reliably. Across the floor, behind glass walls and a door that rarely stayed open, he sat at his desk pretending to read reports. He told himself that nothing had changed. He was still the same man who had built the company from a folding table and a second-hand laptop. Still the same executive who valued efficiency over sentiment, results over personalities. He had never believed in favoritism, never believed emotions belonged in the workplace. And yet, that morning, his eyes lifted from his screen more often than usual. He noticed things he had never noticed before. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear when she concentrated. The way she paused for half a second before answering questions, as if choosing the most precise words instead of the fastest ones. The way she held doors open for people who did not thank her. It irritated him. Not because she was doing anything wrong, but because he could not understand how he had missed her for so long. She was not ambitious in the loud way others were. She did not linger after meetings to make herself visible. She did not speak unless spoken to, and even then, only enough to be helpful. That night, she stayed late again. A last-minute request came in just before 5. Something small, something no one else wanted to handle. She accepted without hesitation, sent a short confirmation email, and settled in as the office emptied around her. From his office, he watched the lights dim one by one. He should have left. He had dinner plans, a call scheduled, a life that rarely waited for anyone. But instead, he remained where he was, telling himself he just wanted to finish one more page. When he finally stood to leave, he passed her desk. She looked up, surprised, then offered a polite smile. "Good evening," she said. Her voice was neutral now, professional, the warmth from the night before carefully packed away. He nodded, unsure why his chest felt tight. "Still working?" he asked, even though the answer was obvious. "Yes," she replied. "I will be done soon." No complaint, no expectation. As he walked away, one thought followed him down the hallway, unwelcome and persistent. If she could disappear this easily in his own company, how many others like her had he never truly seen? And for the first time, he wondered whether the problem was not invisibility at all. It was where he had chosen to look. He told himself it was curiosity, nothing more. The following days passed without incident, at least on the surface. Meetings came and went, emails piled up. Decisions were made, signed, approved, and forgotten. The company moved the way it always had, smooth and efficient, like a machine built to ignore the individual pieces that kept it running. But his attention no longer moved the same way. He began to notice patterns. She arrived early every morning, not to be seen, but to be ready. She organized shared files no one had asked her to touch, corrected mistakes before they reached the people who would have taken credit for fixing them. When something went wrong, she did not explain herself. She fixed it. Once, he watched her return a misplaced wallet she had found near the copy room. She did not announce it, did not wait for thanks. She simply placed it on the owner's desk and walked away before anyone noticed. That was when he made a decision. Not a large one, not yet. He told himself he needed to understand what kind of person she was when no one was watching. Whether the quiet reliability was real or just another carefully managed mask. So he started small. He sent a request late in the afternoon, framed as optional. Something that could wait until morning, something most employees would politely delay. She responded within minutes. "Of course, I can take care of it tonight." No exclamation point, no attempt to impress. That night, as the office emptied, he walked past her desk again. This time, he slowed. "You do not have to stay," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "It is not urgent." She looked up, slightly confused. "I know," she replied, "but it will be easier if I finish now." There was no eagerness in her voice, no resentment either, just a statement of fact. He nodded and continued walking, the strange feeling returning, heavier than before. He began creating more of these moments, small tasks, minor inconveniences, situations that revealed character rather than ambition. She never pushed back, never flattered him, never asked for recognition. When praised, she accepted it politely, as if unsure what to do with it. When overlooked, she did not change. What unsettled him most was how little she seemed to expect. One afternoon, he overheard a conversation near the break room. Someone joked about how easy it was to assign her extra work because she never said no. The laughter was casual, thoughtless. She stood nearby, refilling her coffee, expression unchanged. Later that day, he watched her help the same person troubleshoot a problem that would have taken hours to fix alone. That was when the test stopped feeling like an experiment and began to feel personal. He was no longer asking whether she was different. He was asking himself why he had allowed people like her to be invisible in the first place. Still, he did not reveal anything. He dressed the same way, spoke the same way, maintained the distance that power demanded. He did not offer favors or exceptions. He did not step in when others dismissed her work. Instead, he observed. And the more he watched, the clearer it became. Her kindness was not strategic. Her work ethic was not performative. She did not adjust herself based on who was in the room. She was consistent. That consistency began to unsettle him more than ambition ever had. One evening, as she packed her bag, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, smiled briefly, and slipped it away without answering. No words this time, no laughter, just a quiet moment she kept to herself. He looked away, the memory of her voice echoing in his mind again. "I am free tonight, my love." He did not know who waited for her on the other end of that call. He did not know what role she played in someone else's life. What he knew, with growing certainty, was that she was not invisible. She had simply been standing in a place no one powerful had bothered to look. And now that he was looking, he was no longer sure he liked what that said about him. The shift happened quietly. No announcement, no email sent to the entire team. Just a short message that appeared in her inbox late one afternoon, marked with his name in the sender line. "Could you stop by my office before you leave today?" She stared at the screen for a moment longer than usual. It was not panic she felt, but caution. Messages like that rarely meant praise. They usually meant revisions, clarifications, or tasks no one else wanted. She replied the same way she always did. "Of course, I will be there." When she knocked on his door, it was already after 6. The hallway outside was nearly empty, the sounds of the office reduced to distant printers and the low hum of cleaning machines. "Come in," he said. She stepped inside, hands folded loosely in front of her, posture respectful but not tense. "You wanted to see me?" she asked. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Yes, please sit." She did, smoothing her skirt slightly, eyes attentive but calm. She had no idea this moment had been planned. He slid a folder across the desk, careful to keep his tone even. "There is a small project I need help with," he said. "Nothing urgent, mostly coordination and follow-up." She opened the folder, scanning the contents quickly. It was administrative work, but more detailed than usual. Cross-department communication, scheduling, tracking progress. The kind of task that required patience more than authority. "I can do this," she said. He watched her closely, searching for something. Hesitation, excitement, fear. None came. "You will be working directly with me on this," he added, as if testing the weight of the words. She looked up, surprised for a fraction of a second, then nodded. Understood. That was it. No questions about visibility, no assumptions about promotion, no attempt to read between the lines. As she stood to leave, he spoke again. "This may require staying late some days." She smiled politely. "That is fine." Over the next week, their schedules began to overlap more often. They reviewed documents together, sat in quiet rooms going over timelines, exchanged brief conversations that never drifted into personal territory. He noticed how prepared she always was, how rarely she needed clarification, how she never tried to steer the conversation toward herself. Once, during a late evening meeting, he offered to order dinner. "You can expense it," he said. She hesitated, then shook her head. "I already brought something," she replied, pulling a simple container from her bag. "Thank you, though." It was such a small thing, but it stayed with him. He began to realize that she navigated the world with a careful self-reliance, one shaped by necessity rather than pride. She accepted help when it was practical, declined it when it felt unnecessary. The test continued, though its purpose was shifting. He found himself creating reasons to keep her involved, not because the project required it, but because her presence steadied the room. Conversations felt clearer, decisions felt grounded. One evening, as they wrapped up, he asked without thinking, "Do you enjoy this kind of work?" She paused, considering the question honestly. "I enjoy finishing things," she said. "I enjoy knowing something is better because I was part of it." No performance, no strategy. That answer followed him home. He still told himself he was being careful, that he was keeping his distance, that whatever he felt was irrelevant. But each day, the line blurred a little more. He had invited her into his orbit on purpose, and he was beginning to understand that once someone like her was seen, she could not be unseen again. The change did not announce itself. It crept in through small moments, through silences that felt heavier than words. He began noticing what he had trained himself not to notice before. The way her phone lit up during late evenings, the way she checked it quickly, then turned it face down on the desk, as if guarding something private. The way her shoulders relaxed just a little after reading certain messages. He told himself it was nothing. Employees had lives, relationships, people waiting for them beyond the glass walls of the office. Still, when he saw her smile at a screen that was not his, something in him tightened. One night, they were the only two left on the floor again. The city outside was dark now, reflected in the windows like a second office layered over the first. She finished typing, saved her work, and began packing her bag. "You are heading out?" he asked, more quickly than he intended. "Yes," she replied, glancing at the clock. "I finished everything on the list." He nodded, then hesitated. "Do you need anything else?" she added genuinely. He shook his head. "No, that will be all." She smiled politely and stepped past him toward the elevator. As she waited, her phone buzzed. This time, she answered. "Yes," she said softly. "I am on my way." There was a pause, then a small laugh. Quiet, intimate. "I know," she said. "I told you. I will not forget." The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, unaware of the man standing frozen behind her. The doors closed. The silence that followed was loud. He returned to his office and sat down, staring at nothing in particular. For the first time in years, he could not focus on work. Numbers blurred, words lost meaning. Who was she talking to? Why did the thought matter? He told himself this was a test, that he was simply confirming something about her life, about whether she behaved differently when she thought no one important was watching. But the truth was harder to admit. He was not testing her anymore. He was reacting. The following days only made it worse. He overheard fragments, short conversations in hallways, her voice on the phone in the break room, gentle and unguarded in a way it never was with him. Once, someone joked casually, "You always seem to have plans after work." She smiled. "I do." That smile lingered with him far longer than it should have. He caught himself wondering what she wore outside the office, what kind of places she went, what kind of person earned the warmth she so carefully withheld at work. The jealousy surprised him with its intensity. It was not possessive, not angry. It was quiet, uncomfortable, personal. He had built an entire life on control, on understanding systems and outcomes, and yet here he was, unsettled by the idea that someone else knew her in a way he did not. One evening, he pushed too far. He assigned a task late in the day, more urgent than the others. When she looked up, surprised, he added, "I will need it tonight." She hesitated, just for a moment. "I can do it," she said slowly, "but I may need to leave a little earlier than usual." The words hit him harder than he expected. Earlier, for someone else. "I see," he replied, his tone neutral, though his chest felt tight. She completed the work efficiently, as always, and left on time without apology. That night, alone in his office, the realization finally settled. He was no longer indifferent. He was jealous. And worse, he had no right to be, because whatever she had waiting for her beyond these walls did not belong to him. And that truth burned more sharply than he was willing to admit. The realization did not come all at once. It arrived quietly, the way truth often does when it no longer needs drama to announce itself. The next afternoon, he found himself in the break room earlier than usual. He was not looking for coffee. He was looking for something to interrupt the thoughts that had followed him home the night before. She was already there, standing by the counter, stirring sugar into a paper cup, her shoulders slightly hunched in the way people do when they think they are alone. "Good afternoon," she said when she noticed him, stepping aside to make space. "Good afternoon," he replied. They stood there in silence for a moment, not uncomfortable, just unfilled. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, hesitated, then smiled in a way that softened her entire face. "I should answer this," she said, almost apologetically. "Of course," he replied, turning away. She stepped a few feet toward the window, lowering her voice. "Yes, I know," she said. "I will pick it up on the way home." A pause. No, do not worry. I already checked. It is fine. Another pause, then a quiet laugh. You always assume the worst, she said gently. He froze. There was nothing secretive in her tone. No flirtation, no tension, only familiarity, responsibility. When she ended the call and returned, she looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said. My sister. He turned back to her, surprised. Your sister? He repeated. Yes, she said, lifting her cup. She worries too much, especially about our mother. Something in his chest loosened. I did not mean to intrude, he said. You did not, she replied. I probably talk about them too much. You care about them, he said before thinking. She smiled, smaller this time. They are all I have. The words stayed with him long after she left the room. That evening, he did something he had not done in years. He asked questions. Not probing ones, not leading ones, just simple, human ones. How is your mother doing? Is your commute long? Do you ever get any rest? She answered honestly, without suspicion. She spoke about hospital visits, about shared apartments, about learning to stretch every dollar and every hour, about how saying, I am free tonight, often meant she had finally carved out time to take care of someone else, not romance, responsibility. He listened, feeling the weight of his assumptions settle uncomfortably on his shoulders. All this time, he had built a story around her without knowing a single fact. The jealousy that had burned so fiercely now shifted into something else. Shame. He had watched her, tested her, measured her worth in quiet moments, all while knowing nothing about the life she carried outside those walls. Later that night, alone in his office, he stared out at the city lights. He understood now. The test had ended, not because he had learned enough about her, but because he had learned something about himself. He had mistaken distance for discipline, control for leadership, and in doing so, he had almost crossed a line that should never be crossed. She had never belonged to anyone else. She had simply belonged to herself. And the warmth he had overheard in her voice was not love spoken to a partner. It was love spoken to family. The realization did not make things easier. It made them harder. Because now, stripped of jealousy and misunderstanding, there was nowhere left to hide from the truth. He did not want to test her anymore. He wanted to respect her. And that meant deciding what kind of man and what kind of leader he was willing to be next. The line was crossed the moment she noticed the change. Not in his words, but in his attention. He began stopping by her desk more often, asking questions that were no longer strictly about work, standing a little too long after answers had been given, watching, listening, weighing things she had never offered to share. At first, she told herself it was temporary, a new project, a phase, something that would pass once priorities shifted again. But it did not pass. One afternoon, as she gathered her things to leave on time, he spoke without looking up from his screen. You were leaving early again. It was not an accusation, but it was not neutral either. She paused, then turned back calmly. I finished everything assigned, she said, and I told you earlier this week I had commitments. He nodded slowly, as if noting something down. Family? He asked. The question landed heavier than he intended. Yes, she replied. Always. Silence filled the space between them. She waited. He did not speak. That was when she understood. He had not meant to cross a boundary, but he had. And whether intentional or not, it was beginning to feel like something else. Pressure. That night, she did not go home right away. She walked instead, letting the cool air steady her thoughts. She had worked too hard to feel uneasy in a place that paid her to be invisible, not scrutinized. The next morning, she requested a meeting. Nothing dramatic, just a calendar invite with a neutral subject line. When she sat across from him, her posture was steady. I want to talk about my role, she said. He nodded, attentive. I appreciate the opportunity to help with the project, she continued, but I need clarity. Clarity about what? He asked. About expectations, she said, and boundaries. The word hung between them. She took a breath. I am here to work. I am willing to work hard, but I cannot stay late indefinitely. I cannot be available beyond what is reasonable, and I cannot feel as though my personal life is being evaluated. He stiffened. That is not my intention, he said quickly. I believe you, she replied, But intentions do not change impact. She let the words settle. I have been invisible here for a long time, she said softly. I learned how to survive that. What I cannot navigate is being noticed without knowing why. He looked at her then, truly looked, and for the first time, he saw not an employee, but a woman drawing a line. I do not want special treatment, she continued, and I do not want to be tested. I want fairness, or I would rather step away. The final words were not a threat, they were a choice. Silence stretched. He felt the weight of everything he had nearly become, a man using power without naming it, curiosity slipping into control. You are right, he said finally. She did not relax. I should not have let my attention blur into expectation, he continued. That was unfair to you. She nodded once. I need to know, she said, steady and clear, that if I stay, it is because my work matters, not because I was noticed. He met her gaze. It does matter, he said, and I am sorry it took me so long to act like it. She stood. Then we are clear, she said. As she left the room, he understood the truth he could no longer avoid. This was not about losing her as an employee. It was about earning the right to remain someone she could respect. The change did not come with an announcement. It came with action. The following week, the project she had been working on was reassigned, not taken away, but restructured. Clear deadlines, clear scope, clear end. No late-night requests disguised as urgency, no quiet tests disguised as opportunity. And something else changed too. Her name appeared on an internal email for the first time. Not buried at the bottom, not implied, written plainly, credited correctly. She noticed it when a colleague stopped by her desk. I did not realize you were coordinating this, he said, surprised. Nice work. She smiled, small and genuine. Thank you. From that day on, the tone shifted. He no longer stopped by her desk without reason. When he needed something, he scheduled time. When he gave feedback, it was direct and professional. When she declined additional work, he accepted it without question. The balance returned. One evening, as she gathered her things, he approached her desk again. This time, he kept a respectful distance. Do you have a moment? He asked. She considered, then nodded. Yes. They walked to a small conference room with the door left open. He did not sit at the head of the table. He sat across from her, the way equals do when they intend to listen. I owe you clarity, he said. She waited. When you spoke to me last week, you were right, he continued. I allowed my perspective to shift in a way that was not fair to you. She watched him carefully. He did not rush. I never intended to test you, he said. But intention does not excuse impact. I crossed into territory that should never be crossed. He paused. I want to be clear about something. Any opportunity you receive here will be based on your work, not my attention, not my feelings. The word landed between them, named at last. She inhaled slowly. I appreciate you saying that, she replied, and I appreciate the changes. He nodded. There is one more thing, he said. I need you to know that nothing you shared about your family will ever be used against your time or your career. You have my word. She studied his face, not searching for perfection, only sincerity. I believe you, she said. He did not smile. I hope I earned that belief, he replied. The following Friday, she finished her work early. As she shut down her computer, she noticed a calendar notification she had not expected. Team review meeting. Her name listed as presenter, not optional. Assigned. She looked up, heart steady, and met his gaze through the glass of his office. He did not wave, did not signal. He simply nodded once. That night, she walked out of the building without hesitation, not because she was leaving something behind, but because, for the first time, she knew exactly where she stood. And inside his office, watching her go, he understood something just as clearly. This was not redemption through grand gestures or confessions. It was redemption through restraint, through choosing respect over power, and through giving her what she had never asked for, but always deserved, the right to choose him back, only if she ever wanted to. The meeting room was full, not crowded but attentive. She stood at the front, a simple slide behind her, hands steady on the remote. She did not rush. She did not apologize for taking space. She spoke clearly, explaining decisions she had helped shape, outcomes she had quietly carried for weeks. People listened. When she finished, there was a pause, then questions, thoughtful ones, engaged ones, And when the meeting ended, someone clapped. Then another. She nodded once, professional, composed, and returned to her seat without looking toward his office. But he was watching, not with pride that demanded ownership, and not with distance that pretended indifference. He watched the way a leader watches someone who has earned their place without being granted permission. Later that afternoon, she found a note on her desk. Not handwritten, not dramatic. A printed message, folded once. "Thank you for your work on the project. The impact was clear. That was all. No signature needed." That evening, she left on time. Outside, the city moved the way it always had, loud and indifferent and alive. She pulled her coat tighter, checked her phone, and smiled as she typed a short message. "On my way home." The warmth in her voice returned, the same warmth he had overheard weeks ago. But now, it felt different to her too. It no longer belonged to a part of her life that had to be hidden from work. It was simply hers. Days passed, then weeks. Their interactions settled into something steady and honest. Professional first, respectful always. When they spoke, it was intentional. When they disagreed, it was direct. When she succeeded, it was acknowledged without ceremony. One Friday evening, as she gathered her things, he approached her desk. "Are you free this evening?" he asked. The question was careful, open-ended. She looked at him, considering not the words, but the way they were offered. "Yes," she said, "I am." He nodded. "There is a coffee place near the corner," he said, "if you would like to talk, outside of work. No assumptions, no pressure." She smiled just slightly. "I would," she replied. They walked out of the building together, not as boss and employee, not as something undefined and tense, but as two people choosing the same direction. She had not been invisible. She had been unseen. And the difference mattered, because love did not begin when power noticed kindness. It began when power learned how to step back. And when she chose to step forward, it was not because he asked. It was because he finally gave her the space to decide.